We're all aware of the tragic backlog that deeply affects so many of our nation's heroes all across this country, and particularly in my district back home in North Carolina. Fixing this issue needs to be one of the highest priorities of Congress and its administration. We owe it to our veterans, and I know that many of my colleagues agree that we owe them to do this. However, the solution is not necessarily to continue to throw money at the problem. We've done that for years without the results we're looking for. And the reality is the fiscal situation we find ourselves in today means that we can no longer afford to be so short-sighted in our approach. In order to reform the VA, or any other for that matter, we need to have a clear understanding of what costs are associated with running their programs so we can evaluate their effectiveness and root out those that are wasteful, duplicative, and are underperforming. Now, Mr. Chairman, I know you've been a leader on this issue and have tried for years to get from the VA a clear breakdown of what their administrative costs are. Is that correct?
Yes, I have, and it's an ongoing problem trying to get any of these agencies to tell you what their actual administrative costs are, but it's extraordinarily important. I really appreciate you bringing it to our attention. We're going to continue to work on this with you and other members to ensure that our constituents' hard-earned tax dollars are spent wisely.
Well, I thank the gentleman for his hard work and commitment, and I share his frustration. And I've had a very difficult time as well trying to understand how the VA deals with its overhead. In fact, I've got a story I just heard from a veteran in my district that's probably not unique. This gentleman went to the VA Center in Winston-Salem for an appeals hearing. The veteran service officer, one of the very hard-working veteran service officers around the country, accompanied him to this meeting. He sat down with the VA employee and he asked the employee, "Do you have my file? I don't see it sitting on your desk." The employee said, "Well, we've computerized all the files, so I've got it all here in the computer." The veteran said, "Well, just so I know where you are, which page are you looking at?" And somewhat sheepishly, the VA employee said, "Well, actually, I don't know how to access the files in the computer." It's outrageous. But it got worse from there. So they went forward with the hearing. At the conclusion of the hearing, the employee turned off a tape recorder and popped out the cassette. And the veteran said, "Well, what do you do with that cassette?" And he said, "Well, we send that to San Diego so they can transcribe it. And then in about 6 weeks, we'll get the transcription back, and then we can start processing your claim." Now, Mr. Chairman, this is not what we intended when we asked that we go to a computerized VA system. And it's outrageous that our veterans are having to see these kind of delays. And Mr. Chairman, I ask that you work with us to try to get through this problem.
If I could point out to the gentleman, I've got a software application on here called Dragon Naturally Speaking. You just talk into it and it transcribes it instantly. I believe the VA ought to, as we used to say, get with the 90s.
Absolutely.
How about, get with modern era and just download a few apps on their computers.
Yes, sir. Well,
and we'll bird dog them relentlessly, because that's absurd.
It is absurd. Now, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your commitment to this, the time you put into it. Our veterans deserve the best we can give them. They deserve to be treated with the highest respect, and they deserve to not have to wait these extraordinary amounts of time just to be heard. And so, Mr. Chairman, I commit to working with you to continue to deal with this issue, to take care of our veterans, not just in North Carolina's 8th District, but around the country. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields.